In a breaking story, President Trump has confirmed that the United States has attacked 3 Iranian nuclear sites. Is this the end of Trump's military intervention in the Israel-Iran war, or are things just beginning? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so this was announced by President Trump just an hour ago, saying, quote, "We have completed our very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordow. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention to this matter." Now, in addition to the fact that his tweets grammatically are sort of difficult to understand, what I want to point out is that he's saying he has targeted 3 Iranian nuclear sites. These are major refining sites for the Iranian nuclear program. Now, as we've talked about on this channel quite extensively, it is unclear if how much Iran was moving towards a bomb, but it was fairly obvious that that was their intention, right? Whether they were close or not. They were refining a large amount of uranium past the point that it was necessary for any civilian purpose. And so the fact is that this is probably one of those things that if this ends here, this I think would be an appropriate intervention by the United States. Why do I say that? Well, because this keeps the scale of the operation firmly within the confines of saying, listen, we're not interested in changing the Iranian government. We are simply interested in saying, listen, you are attempting to build a nuclear weapon. And we are diminishing your capacity to do that. Bear in mind that this is in response in part to the IAEA, an international organization, actually stating explicitly that Iran is out of compliance with IAEA regulation, right? And this is a sign, I think, that Iran was also sort of tapping along the president, for lack of a better term, as Iran and the United States were in direct negotiations. And it doesn't look good if you are negotiating say you're negotiating in good faith with another party, and then it turns out that behind that other party's back, you are engaged in a surreptitious campaign to subvert them, right? If you're negotiating about, for example, not cutting down your neighbor's tree, or what to do about a tree that's grown on both of your yards, and then while you're talking with them about what you're going to do, you secretly have a crew go in and cut the tree down, that's seen as being extremely deceitful. And that's essentially what Iran did here. And so, again, if this is the end of it, this is, I think, an adequate conclusion to this effort. And President Trump is correct that there is not another military in the world that could have done this. And that's notable because it involved the U.S. launching what almost certainly are stealth aircraft from a either fighter base in the Middle East or a jet or a carrier, penetrating Iranian air defenses, destroying their most sensitive sites, and then returning home. It's also possible that they literally flew B-2 stealth bombers out of the United States, right? Some of them fly literally out of Missouri, transit the globe in these 24-hour plus missions, drop bombs on their site, turn around and fly home. So I think I hope this is the end of it. I do hope this derails Iran's nuclear ambitions. My number one goal in all this is to avoid escalation. And the only thing that makes me a little salty is that clearly President Trump understood the difference between good and bad faith negotiations. Clearly he said, hey, Iran engaged in bad faith negotiations with me. There is credible evidence that Iran is moving towards a nuclear weapon. Again, U.S. intelligence assessments have maintained that Iran has not restarted a nuclear weapons program. And it's pretty annoying that the president goes against that. But the fact is, I think that it's also worth noting that Iran doesn't really pose a threat to the United States. It didn't probably 3 weeks ago, and it definitely doesn't now. And the fact is that Iran, it's also worth noting, had their proxy group, the Houthis, repeatedly attack not just shipping through the Red Sea, but U.S. warships themselves. And so, again, I don't really have any sympathy for the Iranian regime, but I also am really wary about what I believe is a more serious and dangerous outcome that I want to talk about. Right. But before I mention it, I want to mention that one of the reasons I can talk about controversial issues and offer oftentimes controversial opinions on this channel is because you guys have my back, right? And that is the members of combatvetnews.com. You guys know that when combat footage drops, I can't show it on YouTube. Anything basically involving a weapon firing cannot go on the channel. And so all of those videos, all that combat analysis, that goes to the members of Combat Vet News. But again, you also get access to the whole archive of footage starting back to the beginning of the Ukraine war, and a whole host of other benefits like shout outs and access to Q&As. But really, the members there, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you guys. So the link to that is in the description. Become a member, get access to that stuff if you want to support the channel and what I do. So here's the fear. The fear, as always, guys, is escalation. And if you were alive and aware in 2003, 20 plus years ago, when the war in Iraq began, you might recall that a Republican administration also played a similar sort of escalatory game. They said that, hey, there's this country in the Middle East that's sort of vaguely hostile to us. It's unclear that they have the capacity to harm us, but the administration said, no, we're confident that Saddam Hussein has the vague term weapons of mass destruction. It was always a sort of pick your favorites in terms of what they were talking about. It could have been, for example, weapons of mass destruction can include could have included anthrax, sarin gas, a dirty bomb, a true nuclear program. And the fact is that that was seen as a reason. Intervening to stop the development of these weapons was the reason for sending U.S. troops to fight and die in Iraq. And the problem is that once U.S. troops were in Iraq, suddenly the administration pulled a switcheroo. They said, actually, guys, we're here to establish a democracy in Iraq. Surprise, we're here to establish a new regime. We're actually here to fight for women's rights. We're here to develop the people of Iraq. We're here to build governance in the Middle East. We're here to fundamentally rewrite aspects of Arabic culture in the country. All of these host of random objectives that none of them appear to be vital U.S. security interests, right? Again, U.S. soldiers dying over the fucking gender politics of Iraq is like a parody. It's like something out of a Portlandia sketch, but we did it. It really happened. And so my biggest fear is that the Israelis would like to see the Iranian regime replaced with some other fucking regime. But the problem is that doing so, as we've seen, is something the U.S. military cannot do. You cannot go to a Arab or Muslim majority country, slice off the top, really carve out the government, scoop it out like a Frankenstein brain, and just drop in a new brain, right? You can't do that. It's like scooping out a monkey brain and being like, hey, we're going to drop in an orangutan brain. It'll be just the same thing. It's not. You can't do it. And so... but somehow it's like clockwork. Every 20 to 30 years, the American government gets it in its head that it's so powerful that, yes, we can simply hand wave away thousands of years of a unique, specific culture with unique values and replace it. And democracy will work everywhere, exactly like it works here and in Western Europe, ignoring the literal 1,000 years of history, of bloody, violent history that it took to create a culture that was open to democratic or representative government. And so when you see things like Israel targeting Iranian state media, when you see the president say things like the Ayatollah cannot be allowed to remain in power, these sort of statements are not the things you say because their government made a boo-boo and got a little too close to the sun on their nuclear program. Those are the statements you make when you want to do a little regime changing. And again, it bothers me. I don't mind that Trump, Mr. Peace President, recognizes that sometimes the best way to maintain peace is to use a little force. But I worry that this is going to escalate. And the fact is that regardless of your personal feelings, politically, targeting Iran is unbelievably popular with the US public. And let's see if I can find the data here. Now, admittedly, this is something that Fox News put out, but this is a legitimately done poll here that is not seen as being overtly political. But let's see if we can find it. How much are you concerned about? Here we go. Iran getting a nuclear bomb. How concerned are you? And in fact, it ended up being, of all Americans, about 80% of Americans said that Iran getting a nuclear bomb is really concerning. About 21% said they're not concerned at all. Now, just because something is popular doesn't mean it is correct. And as I point out, North Korea got a nuclear bomb, and it didn't appear to fundamentally alter the security apparatus of the Pacific. And so it is unlikely that the Iranians developing a nuclear weapon would fundamentally re-alter the security apparatus, though it would unfortunately force the Saudi Arabian government to develop a nuclear weapon, which in turn would likely cause countries like the Egyptians. It would risk cascading a nuclear weapon kind of across the Middle East. And the fact that that doesn't happen, or it didn't happen in the case of North Korea, sort of creating a blossoming of nuclear weapons across the Pacific, is probably because the United States has guaranteed the nuclear security of countries like South Korea and Japan. So this is, again, a popular decision. And you guys know I call out the president for what I think is bad policy making all the time. And I'm not convinced that this, as long as it doesn't turn into a larger Middle Eastern intervention, seems like a disciplined, effective way to say, listen, Iran, we gave you a lot of second chances, but you can't play these games. Anyway, guys, thank you so much to all our Colonel tier members, especially people like Peter Fucci, Dan M, Petch True, Henry Russier, Ida Skycall, Chris Rossi, AL90, Sergey Zinheko, D Stewart, James Porsche, B Perling, and all of our Lieutenant tier members. All you guys are the OGs making this whole thing possible for us. I appreciate each and every one of you guys so much. Hit that subscribe button. Cheers. See ya.